Hello everyone and welcome to today's lesson. Today, we're going to explore the Pretérito Imperfecto, also known as the imperfect past tense, in Spanish. This tense is essential for describing ongoing, habitual, or incomplete actions in the past. By the end of this lesson, you will have a clear understanding of how to conjugate regular, ir, verbs in the Pretérito Imperfecto. You'll also learn when to use this tense and see examples of it in context. Let's get started. Now, let's learn how to conjugate verbs in the Pretérito Imperfecto. This tense is used to describe actions that were ongoing, habitual, or not completed in the past. We will look at three types of verbs, ir verbs. Let's start with ir verbs. We'll use hablar, which means to talk or to speak, as our example. Here are the conjugations: yo hablaba, tú hablabas, él, ella, usted hablaba, nosotros hablábamos, vosotros hablabais, ellos, ustedes, hablaban. So for ir verbs, we use the endings haba, habas, haba, habamos, habáis, haban. Next, let's look at verbs. Our example will be aprender, which means to learn. Here are the conjugations: yo aprendía, tú aprendías, él, ella, usted aprendía, nosotros aprendíamos, vosotros aprendíais, ellos, ustedes, aprendían. For verbs, we use the endings ia, ias, ia, íamos, íais, ían. Finally, let's look at ir verbs. We'll use vivir, which means to live, as our example: yo vivía, tú vivías, él, ella, usted vivía, nosotros vivíamos, vosotros vivíais, ellos, ustedes, vivían. The endings for ir verbs are the same as those for verbs: ia, ias, ia, íamos, íais, ían. This makes it easier to remember, as you only need to learn one set of endings for both and ir verbs. So to recap, the Pretérito Imperfecto tense is used to describe ongoing habitual, or incomplete actions in the past. The conjugation patterns for ir, and ir verbs are distinct, with ir verbs using the endings haba, habas, haba, habamos, habáis, haban, and ir verbs using ia, ias, ia, íamos, íais, ían. Now that we've covered how to conjugate verbs in the Pretérito Imperfecto, let's talk about when to use this tense. The Pretérito Imperfecto is particularly useful for describing repetitive or regular activities in the past, states or conditions, simultaneous actions, and ongoing actions that serve as the background for another action. Firstly, we use the Pretérito Imperfecto for actions that were repetitive or regular in the past. For example, mis amigos y yo veíamos películas todos los días. My friends and I used to watch films every day. Mi madre siempre cocinaba este plato. My mother always used to cook this dish. These sentences show actions that happened regularly in the past. The words, todos los días, and siempre, indicate the frequency of these actions. Secondly, the Pretérito Imperfecto is used to describe states or conditions in the past. These can include emotions, physical states, or the condition of objects. Examples: no fui al cine porque estaba muy cansada. I didn't go to the cinema because I was very tired. La casa estaba desordenada. The house was messy. In these sentences, estaba describes a state of being tired or the condition of the house. Thirdly, we use this tense to describe two actions that were happening at the same time in the past. Examples: mientras Miguel leía el periódico, María hablaba por teléfono. While Miguel was reading the newspaper, Maria spoke on the phone. Pablo tocaba la guitarra y cantaba canciones. Pablo played the guitar and sang songs. The use of mientras and the two actions happening simultaneously emphasize the ongoing nature of these activities. Lastly, the pretérito imperfecto can be used to set the background for another action that interrupts it. Examples: María hablaba por teléfono cuando alguien llamó a la puerta. María was speaking on the phone when someone rang the door. La guerra empezó cuando éramos pequeños. The war began when we were little. Here, hablaba and éramos describe ongoing actions or states that were happening when another action occurred. To help identify when to use the pretérito imperfecto, we can look for certain indicator words that signal ongoing, habitual, or simultaneous actions. Words that express frequency often indicate the use of the pretérito imperfecto. Example: siempre, always. Todos los días, every day. 3 veces a la semana, 3 times a week. Sentences. Todos los sábados íbamos a jugar al fútbol. We used to play football every Saturday. Nos veíamos 2 veces al mes. We saw each other twice a month. These frequency words show regular actions in the past. Words that indicate simultaneous actions also help determine the use of this tense. Example: mientras, while. Cuando, when. Sentences. Mientras dormía, soñaba con vacaciones en el mar. While I was sleeping, I dreamed of holidays by the sea. In this sentence, mientras introduces an action that was happening at the same time as another. Before we finish and move on to practice exercises, let's look at the irregular verbs in the pretérito imperfecto. There are only 3 verbs with irregular forms: ser, to be, ir, to go, and ver, to see. Here are the conjugations for these irregular verbs. These forms do not follow the regular conjugation patterns we saw earlier and need to be memorized. Now is the time to practice to see if you remember the content of this lesson. Great job everyone! Today we learned about the pretérito imperfecto, an essential tense in Spanish for talking about habitual actions, past states, and ongoing actions that were interrupted. We've seen how to conjugate at, it, and ir verbs in this tense, and we've practiced with some examples. To summarize, remember that the pretérito imperfecto is used to describe repeated or continuous actions in the past states of being, simultaneous actions, and background actions that provide context for a completed action. It's important to distinguish this tense from others we've learned, such as the pretérito perfecto simple, which is used for completed actions. Make sure to practice these conjugations and try to incorporate them into your conversations to become more comfortable with their use. In our next lesson, we will be moving on to the past perfect tense, or pretérito pluscuamperfecto. This tense is used to describe actions that were completed before another action in the past. So, stay tuned and ready to expand your understanding of past tenses in Spanish. Thank you all for your attention and participation today. Hasta luego.